It's been a huge year for Ubisoft in so many ways.
You know what we haven't talked about for a while? What we haven't talked about for a while is how Ubisoft spent years promoting and covering for abusers. Hello. So with the news that Netflix is getting a couple of shows based on Ubisoft games, what better time is it than now to remind you that Ubisoft spent years promoting and covering for abusers? Because certainly if you look at all of the excited news stories brimming about those Netflix shows, you won't read about them. Anyway, Ubisoft likes to pretend it's woke, and that's fucking nonsense. Let's find out why. Content warning. Well, we're talking about Ubisoft. Obviously there's a content warning. Because of the abuse and the predatory behaviour at Ubisoft. This work of fiction was designed, developed and produced by a multicultural team of various beliefs, sexual orientations and gender identities. This is the message that proudly prefaces Ubisoft's games. Originally focused on religious beliefs, the statement was extended to cover wider inclusivity in 2015 and earned a positive reception for presenting Ubisoft's open-minded approach and willingness to welcome diverse voices in the otherwise stagnantly populated mainstream game design process. Behind the scenes, however, a very different message was being sent. While it pantomimed its wokeness for the general public, the company's human resources department was willfully, if not outright maliciously, ignoring and suppressing complaints of homophobia, misogyny, and racism rife throughout the company. While Ubisoft soaked in the easy applause for saying a multicultural team worked on Assassin's Creed, what it wasn't telling anybody was how that multicultural team was being routinely preyed upon by emotional, physical, and sexual abusers. As we now know, Ubisoft has been coddling, covering for, and actively promoting abusers for years, if not decades, burying allegations to protect high-ranking victimizers. For years, men in the company were given free rein to bully, hurt, and outright attack people with impunity. And even though CEO Yves Guillemot was and could still be very good friends with a man notorious for strangling women, drugging food, and using his position to harass employees at will, we're supposed to believe that he didn't know things at Ubisoft were quite so bad. And you can believe that if you want. I won't say Yves Guillemot is a liar when he downplays the extent of his knowledge, but I'll say that he's been working very hard to make his vague, non-committal statements not sound like a straightforward lie. Women don't sell. This was the message being sent backstage at Ubisoft while its games boasted of multiculturalism and diversity. Women don't sell. As if the abuse allegations, many of which are scattered throughout the 2010s, didn't do enough to lay bare Ubisoft's woke hypocrisy. Stories have emerged detailing exactly how much Ubisoft was actually listening to the diverse voices making its games. And it wasn't much. It wasn't much at all. I was in the Montreal studio on AC2 to 10, Origins, and UB execs said women don't sell. Every upside down face, single upside down face time, explained Marie Jasmine, a UI UX dev now at Bethesda. Oh wait, I just copied and pasted the thing in the script. She didn't say upside down face, she used up the shit. I am in awe of the UB Quebec staff who fought teeth and claws to get Evie and later Cassandra to even exist. Know that before them, many battles were lost. On the topic of Cassandra, Jason Schreier recently reported that she was set to be the sole protagonist of Assassin's Creed Odyssey, but that Ubisoft's most powerful creative force, Sergei Haskaway, the employee-strangling, food-spiking serial harasser who Yves Guillemot was very good friends with, outright denied the possibility of a playable woman who wasn't chaperoned by a playable man.
Women don't sell,
is what Schreier reports as the reasoning given by Sergei Haskaway and his marketing team. Women, according to Ubisoft, don't sell. It's somewhat ironic that Sergey believed women don't sell because he sure as shit loves his pornography and was known for playing it at work. As is all too common across many game studios, Ubisoft's cultural atmosphere was marked by a frat boy mentality. Last year I compared certain game companies to Animal House, with their love of laddie humour, workplace drinking, and insistence on holding meetings at strip clubs regardless of the comfort level of all the attendees. That one the game industry just fucking loves. To any video game executives watching this, does it make you feel like a big man? Does it make you feel like you're like a cocaine cowboy from the 80s holding your little meetings in your little strip clubs? Because you're not, you sad 40-something-year-old wanker. Feel free to frequent a strip club on your own time, but it's overplayed, tacky, and pitiful. If you think holding a business meeting there is cool. It's not badass! In Scryer's report, Animal House is exactly how Ubisoft's editorial department is described. And again, a note for video game executives, because this also seems to be fairly common in certain publishers. Enjoy all the porn you want on your own time, but no one else needs to see what you masturbate over. We already know you're a total fucking wanker. Even worse, all of this bullshit seems to be by design. French site Liberation published its own findings after talking with Ubisoft staff and found that Sergei Askaway was actively valued for his misogynistic behaviour and his tendency to bully others, praised internally for having a crushing leadership style. According to sources, CEO Yves, a good friend of the person crusher, historically never gave a shit about the reports of bullying, never cared about how executives like Tommy Francois tried to force a kiss on a colleague, how people who didn't drink were called and the general air of threat and harassment that hung in Ubisoft's creative departments. Ubisoft's head of human resources, among the 3 executives allowed to resign in the wake of these allegations, now 4, Tommy Francois left literally moments before we put this video out, has been quoted as saying thusly, Yves is okay with a toxic management as long as these managers' results exceeds their toxicity level. Ubisoft gives a second chance or a third chance, or more if necessary, to its key employees, the ones that proved themselves. This is why men like Sergei Askaway with pathetically outdated notions of what makes a successful product were able to keep their jobs, while pumping out generic cookie-cutter open-world games with radio towers and bandit camps. Why Maxime Bellend could stick around despite a history of drunken violence and sexual harassment. Why sex abuser Stone Chin remains employed. He denies his allegations, by the way, but I don't think he counted on folks like me already knowing what he'd gotten up to. Why Sergei could just watch and laugh while fellow executive Tommy Francois forcefully kissed a colleague at a party like we just mentioned. So long as Ubisoft's nebulously designed sandbox formula kept bringing in money, Yves was happy to let his friends, and they were his friends, create an atmosphere so steeped in toxicity you might as well call it Tromaville. The reports of racism and homophobia are worth lingering on as we further skewer Ubisoft's exhibitionistic bloviation. At Ubisoft Sofia, a studio that has been especially noted for its hateful environment, Star Wars star John Boyega would casually be referred to as a monkey, and I can't believe that's a thing I've had to say. Homophobic jokes across the whole company are said to be as rampant as the regular genital grabbing and unwanted massages, and holy shit, I can't believe these are things we are saying about a mainstream game publisher's entire corporate ecosystem. But then, it's a corporate ecosystem in which very rich white men are allowed to do what they want, so we shouldn't be surprised, because that's basically what those environments do on the fucking reg. It's just the hate. The seething hatred and contempt for other human beings that has been baked into Ubisoft. And I cannot stress enough, I'm keeping details light in this video for the sake of your comfort, and I promise you there's more. And all of it committed under the banner of a company proudly waving the inclusivity flag. Women don't sell. This is what Ubisoft's upper management kept claiming when the diverse team it boasted of tried to create diverse protagonists. Even as games like Horizon Zero Dawn Dawn and The Last of Us Part 2 continue to demonstrate that games with leading women are perfectly capable of mass success, Ubisoft has clung to an archaic marketing myth that the industry was struggling to maintain way back in 2010, let alone as fucking recently as Odyssey's release. Like almost any X doesn't sell argument, what the company was really saying was, we don't want to sell this. Companies decide up front what they do and don't want to sell, and then they try and convince us that it was our decision. This is why these X don't sell mythologies are so popularly built up in the game industry. Strategy games don't sell, single player games don't sell, horror games don't sell, women don't sell. It's all bullshit. It's a lie, and I wouldn't be confident calling it a lie if there wasn't always examples of X selling. Pick an X that the game industry told you doesn't sell. You will always find exceptions to their rules because they're not actual rules, it's stuff they pulled out their fucking arse. Women don't sell. That's an ironic statement because if you believe that, you'll buy fucking anything. But Ubisoft's management, mostly sad white middle-aged men with infantile temperaments and no fucking clue, clung to the myth as long as they could, and Ubisoft was happy to lie to the general public about it. Sergei Haskaway used to bang his head on the table at meetings and growl if they went on too long, cause he's a fucking giant fucking toddler. And that was Ubisoft's most powerful creative force. Not my fucking words. Sergei Haskaway, Ubisoft's most powerful creative force. A very actual man-child. Such creativity, Ubisoft. No wonder all your games are fucking... Women are hard to animate! Do you remember that excuse? That fucking pitiful excuse for why Assassin's Creed as a series kept casting men in the main role. This was the ridiculous justification Ubisoft gave when asked. It's double the animations, it's double the voices, all that stuff, and double the visual assets. Especially because we have customizable assassins. It was really a lot of extra production work. Because of that, the common denominator was Arno. That was the white male protagonist. It's not like we could cut our main character, so the only logical option, the only option we had, was to cut the female avatar. The only option. Fucking morons. Now, in light of recent allegations, that statement about double the assets was rightly mocked at the time for sounding like total bullshit, but it actually perfectly encapsulates Ubisoft's attitude and backs reports that marketing wouldn't allow a solo playable woman. In the quote, creative director Alex Amancio never once even entertains the idea that a woman wouldn't be sharing the spotlight with a straight white man. In his own words, it would be double the animations because it was a foregone conclusion that the main hero would always be a bloke. For Ubisoft, woman protagonists would always represent double the effort because Ubisoft was never not going to have the option of a playable man. For Ubisoft, they had no other choice apparently but to not fucking bother. All because they decided already that women don't sell. Regardless, it was ridiculous even without knowing how averse to women Ubisoft's culture has been. And now a brief snippet of a video from 2014 in which I, as per usual, fucking called it.
I don't believe them for all their individual waving bits of grass they put in their games. I don't believe developers who cry poverty while making crazy profitable games full of corporate sponsorship who spends millions of dollars on new engines and huge animated crowd scenes, but apparently can't afford one more voice actor yet. Neither Assassin's Creed nor Far Cry 4 can have a woman character playable. Fuck off. Oh yeah, they trotted out the same excuse for Far Cry 4, claiming they had plans for optional genders, but just couldn't pull the time and assets out of their arse to perform the immense task of years ago. I asked Zombie Studios exactly how bank-breaking it was to make women playable alongside men, and the answer was not very. Not only are there workarounds to make it cheap and easy by dressing each character exactly the same, but even if you push the boat out and add in all the extra animations and size differences, it's not all that expensive. Every facet of character design is scalable, to the point where adding women is only as expensive offensive as the developer wants to make it. Maybe if games worked harder to appeal to some other human fucking beings, they'd get the audience expansion they so desperately crave. Some gamers love to use the libertarian philosophy to justify these decisions. They say, let the market decide if it wants women characters, which could be a fair retort if game companies actually were letting the market decide. Companies like Ubisoft aren't even giving the market a chance to vote with its wallet. Other companies, if they do have female protagonists, well, it's said that they put like 50% of the marketing budget behind it that they'd put behind a different game. So we'll never know if more people would buy Assassin's Creed Unity if it were more representative, because Ubi isn't being more representative in the first place. Meanwhile, there are an awful lot of gamers on the social networks and in the peanut gallery saying they want more diverse characters in Ubisoft's games, and last time I checked, they were all part of this self-same market. It sounds like the market has decided, and companies like Ubisoft just don't want to listen, because if the company's recent output has taught us anything, the only thing that matters to Ubisoft is homogenized games that look, sound, and act the same way. It's no wonder they're too fucking cowardly to make another type of protagonist.
Ubisoft is dishonest and also has no fucking idea what it's doing. Aside from the things Sergey tried to block, more level-headed creatives at the company were also trying to stop the things he was allowing. Stuff that would have absolutely blown up in the ignorant company's stupid little face. And on the flip side, I wish I could show you all the plethora of absolute garbage that people spent so much of their energy to get cut, explained Bean's co-founder Gabriel Salvatore. Graphic rape scenes with gameplay elements, dogfighting minigames, Native American spirit quests by white people. If I have to explain how any of that would have been absolutely terrible on both a PR and a basic decency level for a mainstream Ubisoft game, if I have to explain any of that, you might just be in line for a promotion at Ubisoft. Here's a choice quote from the self-styled, disgusted former Assassin's Creed writer Jill Murray. The gentleman from Editorial said the protagonist must be a straight white alpha male, and underlined it in red marker, stamping a foot for emphasis. I was demoted over this issue and quit. I trust this cannot be interpreted as disparaging, since the studio was proud of it. There's a term that became quite popular among status quo warriors and right-wing nincompoops in the mid-2010s, and it still sees use today: virtue signalling. It's supposed to mean an overtly conspicuous expression of one's own morality, essentially performing moral values for the sake of approval, compared by some, such as Emily Brewster, to the humble brag. Like many things the internet got its hands on, the term used to have a pretty distinct meaning before getting misused into undefinable oblivion, until it basically meant something I don't like. I get accused of virtue signalling sometimes for expressing opinions and simply having beliefs, but if you want a clear-cut, genuine example, then look no fucking further than Ubisoft. A company that brags about hiring multicultural developers but predominantly promotes white abusive straight men and ignores the very developers being used to score brownie points. This is performative wokeness at its most cruelly disingenuous, not only using marginalized people for promotional purposes, but putting those people under the leadership of men who would ignore, bully, threaten, and in many cases actively assault them. All while the Human Resources Department buried allegations, allowed countless violations, and actually moved the abusers around the company to protect them when accusations in certain departments got too hot to handle. This diversity and inclusion page strewn across Ubisoft studio sites is a nasty fucking joke. Stronger together, it proclaims. We recognise and celebrate a variety of perspectives, opinions, opportunities, and voices, it beams. Most insultingly of all, it hosts the phrase "your voice heard," because that is explicitly what people's voices have not been at Ubisoft. They were not heard, or even worse, they were heard and purposefully ignored, because Ubisoft's management only cared about straight white alpha males. And Ubisoft's HR department's primary focus was protecting abusive straight white alpha males. And Ubisoft CEO Yves Guillemot, straight white male, was besties with the abusive straight white alpha males there. But sure thing, Ubisoft, go off on how you're dedicated to helping people be the change in society, because that's a lie. That's an outright fucking lie from a company that routinely lies about everything from the serious to the utterly petty. If there's one thing Ubisoft most definitely fucking isn't, it's the change in society. It's nothing but a perpetuator of what society's always had: bullying, assault, and the harmful wielding of unchallenged power. Liars. Liars. Cowards. Coddlers of rapists. That's Ubisoft. That's Yves Guillemot. And it sure as fuck ain't woke. Ubisoft CEO and friend to fuckboys Yves Guillemot claims that he has had to face some hard decisions in all of this whenever allegations have come his way. But I'm not sure how hard the decision has to be. Fire rapists and sexual harassers and bullies and fire the abusers, and then the multicultural diverse team that you like to talk about, right? Maybe put them in their place, okay? It doesn't seem like that difficult a decision to me. Fire abusers, promote the people who had to endure them. Simple. You can implement that whenever you like, and you don't even have to thank God for me for it, Yves Guillemot. Patooey. That's what I'd do if I saw him. Finding endings for this show is getting harder and harder, Justin.
I don't know if we're still in the outro or not.
I was born depressed and I end up in one big mess and trip around it.